We're so glad to have Cindy back. Thank you for blessing us. The first name that I was given was Shawn and Barry. That's what was on my birth certificate when I was born in May of 1964. I've always loved my first name, Shawn, spelled S-H-A-W-N. It's Irish in origin. And, when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s, there were a lot of girls in school with the name of Susan and Lisa, but there was certainly nobody named Shawn, and let alone a girl named Shawn. So I always liked that unique aspect of myself. It was my dad that first gave me that name, and over the years I have also collected other names along the way in my path. For instance, in grade school, I was known as a dancer and a swimmer. In high school, I was smart, dependable, friendly, and even was called a rah-rah at times. That was the slang for the girls that were the pom-pom squad who performed during halftime of the football games. And then after school in college, I was actually a radio station DJ, and I was a sorority girl. And then after that, when in my career, I was a journalist, a video producer, script writer, and then a real estate investor. And then today, I'm a Unity minister. So I'm so grateful for those positive words and positive ways that have been part of me claiming my own identity. But you know what? There's also been some names that haven't been quite such a blessing. At least I thought so at the beginning. And I want to go a little bit deeper and share about that. I mentioned the pom-pom performances in high school. I was 16 to 18 years old when I was doing that, and I began to notice at that time that I was about 10 to 15 pounds heavier than the other girls. At that age you can be so critical of yourself. And I actually decided at that time, even though I wasn't, I decided I was fat. So that was a name that I gave myself. Another name that arrived by life circumstance was child of divorce. When I was 13, my parents divorced at a time, when this trend was just really beginning in this country. There weren't very many divorced people. And as a result of that experience, one of my parents actually turned to alcohol for a few years to sort of numb out. And then that added another name to my journey, which was child of an alcoholic. By the time I was in my 20s, I didn't like this adult child name so much, mostly because it made me curious. Remember, I was a journalist, and I was going around every day asking lots of questions, and I had lots of questions about this. But in a strange sort of way, these names that I didn't like led to my own personal quest for health. I've read all kinds of books. I've done all kinds of different therapy. I discovered patterns of codependency, which frankly I think are universal in our culture. And I started a 12-step program, which I often talk about here. I did some Al-Anon work. What I found out is that I was not and am not ever a victim of my past. In fact, I became empowered with new knowledge and awareness, and all of those names that I thought had been a liability, a limitation for me in some way, actually became a strength for me as I learned how to own them as a valid part of my own life experience. My early days of Unity were certainly about healing. But I also started to recognize that there was this invisible force that seemed to be guiding and directing me forward at all times. It was almost like there was a call from spirit that seemed to be pointing the way. Not this way, that way. Not this name, that name. It was over 25 years ago that I first experienced a white stone ceremony at a church here in the Midwest. It was during that time that, in meditation, that I feel like I first received that name from Spirit. And actually, I brought quite a collection. You hear that? This is my little box of white stones. And I don't know if you can see that or not. There's a whole bunch of them in there. They're all different shapes and sizes, some tiles, and even some little ones like what you have received today as you walked in. If you don't have one in your hand, we'll get one to you soon. But these are actually the authentic Jerusalem stones. And what's most exciting as I look through this box is the words that are on the stones. Here's one from 2006 that says charm. And one from not so long ago that says queen. I was in a space of claiming my own queen. And one says joy. One all the way back from 2001 that says honor. What's most interesting to me about these stones is it's like in my 20s when I was so excited to buy my dream car. I bought this little red Mazda Miata convertible. It was so cool. And it had the black top that you put down, and it was two-seater, and so much fun for someone in their 20s. But the minute I bought that car, I started seeing the same car all over the city. Like everywhere I went, they were all over the place. I had no idea. Well, it's the same way with these white stone words. Once we put this word on the stone, there's this interesting process that happens, and we start noticing when that word shows up throughout the year. And it's kind of a fun game, I actually think, to see how Spirit works. So how many names have you had in your life? And how have those names actually made you feel? You know, they're kind of visceral, they're in your body. So when you were a child, kind of listen into yourself as I say these words. Were you wealthy, middle class, or poor? Were you popular or unpopular? Were you musically rhythmic, or were you musically missing the beat? Isn't it interesting how these words define us in our own life? So think of a time in your life when you were hurting. What was your name at that time?
My name was Anthony.
Anthony, okay.
My birth mom named me Anthony.
Okay.
My mom and dad adopted me.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So think of a time when you were unconditionally loving to someone. What was your name at that time? Generosity. Thank you. And another one. Some people want to speak of them. That's fine.
My name was Emmett Anthony Pryor.
Okay, thank you. That's so sweet. Okay. So do you sense how important these names can be? You know, some of these names can be superficial ones, the masks that we wear in society. And yet some of these names go so much deeper, like the white stone words, the words that call to our soul, perhaps define our essence and our divine Christ nature. You know, in the Bible, name changes signified that something had changed within a person, that they had become someone new in consciousness. In Genesis, God changes Abram's name to Abraham. His name change signified his life role as the father of many nations, which is exactly who he became. Several chapters later, Jacob's name was changed to Israel. As Israel, he became the example of the I am. Israel actually means he strives with God. In both cases, these men became completely new people as they took on their new name, follow God, and bring their individual Christ nature forward in service to others. That it does seem to be the pattern. You take on a new name, you follow God, and then you bring your individual Christ nature expression forward into service. Now, in the Christian scriptures or New Testament, Jesus also recognized people by giving them a new name. One of my most favorite characters in the Bible is Paul, which might surprise some of you because he had quite a life. Previously known as Saul, this man was outspoken persecutor of those believing in Jesus and God. Then he had this remarkable, out-of-this-world conversion experience. This is something so powerful that he became he was the opposite of who he was almost immediately. So in today's world, try this on. This would be like being a right-wing conservative Republican, again, right-wing conservative Republican, becoming a left-wing liberal Democrat, and making the change overnight, like that. You think that's possible in our culture today? That's what happened to Saul. So Paul did exactly that in Christian terms, and then he became one of the most zealous orators in support of Jesus and his life. Despite the obvious name changes that did occur in the Bible, the only place that a name change actually was talked about comes at the end in Revelations, and I want to share that with you. This is in chapter 2, verse 17. It says, "Let anyone who has an ear listen to what the Spirit is saying to the churches. To everyone who conquers, I will give some of the hidden manna, and I will give a white stone, and on the white stone is written a new name that no one knows except the one who receives it. So in other words, if you hold to your faith in even the most trying of time, then Jesus will give you this hidden manna and will give you a new name. So you might be asking, what exactly is this hidden manna? In the revealing word, Charles Fillmore had an answer for everything, usually metaphysical. And he says, this is our inner spiritual food, which comes from the understanding of truth. Is it the thoughts that move us out of bondage of sense consciousness and provides a foundation for the spiritual white stone, the foundation of our true Christ self. So the hidden manna is a reference to our hidden truth from within. Emily Cady in Lessons of Truth also talks about the white stone. She says, truth is placed on a mind that is like a clean, white slate. When your old consciousness has been wiped away, there is a space for a new, higher consciousness to form. And I'll share from her. She says, every person in his heart desires, although she may not yet know it, this new birth into a higher life, into spiritual consciousness. Everyone wants more power, more good, more joy. And though to the unawakened mind it may seem that it is more money as money, or more goods that he wants, it is nevertheless more of good, God, that he craves. Bible scholars really don't know where the reference to this white stone came from. There's some references throughout history that we are aware of. One of them is in the 12 tribes of Israel. There were leaders of these tribes, and it was thought that the tribe leaders wore these big breastplates with 12 stones on them, perhaps as like a decoration in some way. And it's thought that maybe one of these white stones on this breastplate might have been white, recognizing and acknowledging perhaps that this tribe leader had a profound sense of spiritual connection. There's another reference throughout ancient history, which comes from Rome, and it's the idea that when there was some kind of competition, the winner of the competition would have been given a white stone with their name on it. And then it was like a ticket. So then the person could take this white stone into maybe a reward ceremony or something and have some special treatment and honor at that time. So again, I may ask you, how many names have you had? How many different people have you been? I really feel like I was one person up until high school, different then again in college, different yet again as a journalist and business owner, certainly a new spiritual person when I entered into Unity. And then in my late 30s, I had this profound change. I became a mother. The most profound experience of my life. Age was quite late when I had my kids, 36 and 39. And I remember thinking, oh my God, even in the midst of the joy, because I just adore my children, I kept thinking, oh my God, what have I done? My whole life is completely gone. This awareness that I'm responsible for these children in such a new way. Profound. And I may add that even though the word on the white stone that year may have been something like mother or parent, the real shift for me was a shift in consciousness and acknowledging that my life is no longer just about me. It's not about me. It's about my family. It's about the world. It's about all of us. So it's a great shift in consciousness at any point in time when we can have that bigger view of how we are in relationship to the world. Now, Robert Brummett, I mentioned him before, he was my mentor in school. He was here just a few short weeks ago. He says in his book, Finding Yourself in Transition, that these transitioning points where we're changing our consciousness to a higher level can be quite difficult and challenging. And he acknowledges that there's often this process of an ending that happens, and then a middle place of wandering, which, to be quite honest, most of us hate. And then this other part of the process where we get to the new beginning. And in Unity, a lot of us don't want to talk about that wandering part because it's just really uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable. And then we get to the new beginning and we're like running around saying, look, what am I doing? That's kind of how we are in Unity. I just want to acknowledge that pattern exists, though. So he's acknowledging that we have to be able to let go. Robert says, much of our old way of life, and indeed much of our identity itself, was formed as a response to some need that once existed. We formed beliefs, attitudes, and patterns, behavior patterns, that may have served us well in our childhood. But 30 or 40 years later, and in our fast world today, I would even say sooner than that, maybe 10 or 20, these same patterns may enslave us and make our life bitter because the circumstances of our life are vastly different. This viewpoint does remind me about my time in Al-Anon in my 20s. It was a reminder to me of, I attended meetings. I dove in and attended meetings at least once a week for over a year. And during that time, I did not experience the change and shift in consciousness with one meeting. I kept going and kept doing work. And I was working the whole year. And it was at the end of the year, when I felt like I had completed the work of going through all of these 12 steps, that I felt this complete shift in consciousness. And it didn't end there. If those of you that do 12-step work now, once you do that work, you just keep doing it. You keep working it. I do know that in Unity, people like to celebrate our accomplishments, but this kind of transformational growth may not come with any fanfare. In fact, it probably won't. When you do the work to truly take on a new name, no one may know. Receiving a new name often happens in private. The Whitestone names have always been really special to me. In particular, one in the box that I noticed from 2004, I had written the word listen. And I remember writing that down and really sitting with it, and I realized that I needed to start meditating. That is the year. Within a few days, I started to sit down for 5 minutes and meditate, and then that time expanded and grew longer. Experienced such a huge shift from having the ability to, at any time, to sit and be still and to listen. So now it's your turn. Each of you will have an opportunity to receive a name from God, and through your Christ self in just a few minutes. I really want you to acknowledge that this word is not coming from out there. It's coming from in here and through you. So after all song, I'll be leading a guided Whitestone meditation. My request in this process is that you breathe and open up and be a clear channel. This is an invitation from Spirit to be called higher, to bring forth the best of your Christ self into this year. I will also ask during the song, if anyone did not receive a stone, that you raise your hand, and I'll have an usher come by and give you a stone. And we'll get pencils too. We may be sharing some of those.
I have a pencil.
Okay, thank you. And then also afterwards, I'll let you know, we'll have some magic markers outside if you want to write the word on the other side in a darker space.
So I invite you to go ahead and once you have your stone, to settle in, perhaps placing your feet on the floor so you can really feel connected to the earth, sitting in a comfortable yet relaxed and alert position. Just do some instrumentation till they get there. Just say yes, yes to life. Just say yes, yes to love. Just say yes, yes to all your dreams. Just say yes to your awakening. Inside you know just who you are, the gifts you bring, you are an offering. Inside you know just what you need. So open your heart and receive. I say yes, yes to life. I say yes, yes to love. I say yes, yes to all my dreams. I say yes to my awakening. Inside I know just who I am, the gifts I bring. I can be anything. Inside I know just how to bloom. So I open my heart and make room. I say yes, yes to all my dreams. I open my heart. I am awakening.
I am awakening. As we join together in this time of meditation, let us become one with Mother Earth and breathe deeply. Place your feet flat on the floor and straighten your spine. Find a relaxed and comfortable position that opens you to the energy of spirit. Breathe. Place your white stone in your hand as we pray. Become aware of the stone's weight and texture. Rejoice in the knowledge that this is your stone and no one else's. Perhaps rub your thumb against the flat surface or close your fist around it. It wasn't that long ago that this stone, this little piece of God, was carved from the earth near Bethlehem in Israel. It came from a sacred place of birth and new beginnings. Now it is your stone. It will soon have a message for you, a new name. Feel the stone as it becomes one with your hand and body as you breathe. The very air I breathe is God, and I pull that into my body. I breathe in God, and I breathe out God. I am one in spirit. I am light. In my mind's eye, I see myself walking in nature. I walk on a well-worn path next to a beautiful forest of trees. There is no reason to hurry. I have all the time and space I need. I continue to breathe deeply as I take in the clear mountain air. I feel free. Up ahead, I notice a mountain and shimmering blue lake. Before that is the most breathtaking field of grasses and flowers that I have ever seen. I eagerly, but with no hurry, step off of my path and enter this field filled with colors of green and tan and yellow and violet. The field shimmers and shines like nothing I have experienced before, and I realize that this is my own field of possibility. I continue to walk through the field and notice beautiful little white stones nestled in the grasses. I gently bend down and pick one up. The light in me matches the light in it, and I know that this stone is mine. Holding it in my hand, I continue to walk through the field and arrive at Old Wise Tree. It stands tall and majestic next to the lake. Old Wise Tree draws me into its rooted arms as I sit and lean back against its strength. Nestled in this sacred space, I open to the message of the white stone. I listen as Spirit easily brings forward a word that will guide and direct me this year. Breathing in and out, I open up in expectancy and listen in silence. Ever so gently, I bring my awareness back into my body. I say a word of gratitude to the wise old tree and the field of possibilities for supporting me in this life journey. In my hand rests the white stone, and I bring it with me as I bring my awareness back into this very room. I also bring back a word that Spirit gave me in the field of possibility. When I am ready, I gently open my eyes and write that word on the stone in my hand. I say a prayer of thanks as I claim my new name. For those that have not yet received a word, just know that Spirit will bring that gift in just the right time and in the right space. Remain open to the field of possibility. This word may arrive in the next hour, in a few days, or perhaps a week, but it will arrive at the perfect time and in the perfect space. As always, we say thank you for this time in the silence and the gift of a new name. I am grateful.